Normalize getting help. See a therapist. Look at these two books together. That's actually really funny. Got the big one and you got the tiny one. But finally, the pick that I went with for this song was The Wolf Den. Whoops. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. It has just started raining outside within the last 10 minutes as I was getting ready to film, so if you can hear the rain in the background then it's ASMR. What can I say? It's a brand new feature of this channel, ASMR in the background. It's autumnal, it's atmospheric vibes. This is going to be kind of a different video, I guess. It's something that I've never done on this channel before, but something that I have been wanting to do for quite a while. We're still going to be talking about books, don't worry. But yeah, we're also going to be talking about music. Specifically, one album that came out earlier this year that is possibly my favourite album release of 2024. Overall, the entire year. And no, it's not the Torture Poets Department, it's not The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, it's not Brat. I am talking about Cacophony, which is the debut album of the indie folk artist Paris Paloma, who I've been following for a good few years now, and it has just been so cool to see her grow in popularity recently and see her get the recognition that she so deserves, because her music is phenomenal. You might know her from the song Labour, which got really popular on TikTok when it was first released. I want to say back in 2022. It was a massive TikTok sound. And yeah, kind of her breakout single. And it's the lead single on this debut album, but all of her music is amazing. So my idea for this video was to go through the album track by track and recommend at least one book. It was originally going to be just one book per song, but I did get a little bit carried away. Recommend at least one book that matches the vibe of the song, or the topics discussed in the song, or the message within it, or is a book that I feel like someone whose favourite song on the album is that song would enjoy. That was basically a really long-winded way of saying the title of this video, which is recommending at least one book based on your favourite song of Cacophony, or words to that effect. I haven't really worked out the entire title yet, but we'll get there. Just one more thing before we actually get on to the video proper and the recommendations. This album discusses some pretty heavy topics, and as such the books that I'm going to recommend, some of them also discuss similarly heavy topics. So I just wanted to mention that, just to give a very brief content warning. I am very briefly going to be touching on things such as abuse and sexual assault and mental illness, stuff like that, and hopefully the YouTube algorithm will not get mad at me for actually saying those words. So yeah, just be mindful and be aware that we will be very briefly touching on those issues within this video. So without further ado, we are going to be starting at the very beginning, which is, I hear, a very good place to start, with track 1, My Mind, in brackets, Now. In this song, the speaker is reflecting on a past relationship where the speaker's partner hurt them very deeply, and kind of expressing a lot of pent-up anger at that relationship. It's not 100% clear in what form this abuse did happen, whether it was physical or emotional or mental, But one thing that is clear is that the speaker has not mentally, emotionally recovered from it. My recommendation for this song is Speak of the Devil by Rose Wilding. This is a kind of whodunit, whydunit thriller in which 7 women discover a man's severed head in an abandoned hotel room. And all of these women are connected to this man in some way or other, and they have all been very much hurt by this man who, let me be clear, is absolute scum of the earth. You learn very quickly on in this book that this guy is a terrible human being. The line in the song, "My mind has not been silent since you," connects with one of the women, Keisha, who is a journalist who, when she was a student, was sexually assaulted by Jamie, the man whose head turns up in the hotel. This happened when she was a student, and ever since then she has dedicated herself to gathering all of these other women together who were hurt by Jamie and compiling evidence with the ultimate aim of exposing Jamie for what he did, everything that he's done. Her one goal for years has been bringing him to justice, and she will not know peace until that happens. The line, "I thought you had a temper, but I guess I thought I was immune," connects with one of the other women, Anna, who is Jamie's friend and colleague, who initially takes his side against Keisha when she accused him of assault back when she was a student, and she works with him to completely discredit her accusations. But eventually Jamie betrays her as well and completely ruins her reputation within their workplace, and she pretty quickly realizes that she is not special. Because she's a woman, Jamie will also completely get her out of the way in order to get what he wants. And finally, the line, "To endure what you put me through, I don't think you would pull out on the other side." I mean, he is literally dead at the start of the book, so I don't think he'd pull through either. This is honestly such a great book that I don't think I've ever seen mentioned on social media before. So yeah, it's pretty underrated and I would definitely recommend it. Check content warnings though. I mentioned quite a few of them in this segment, but yeah, it's pretty heavy. As with most of the books in this video, I would definitely check content warnings. Next up we have track 2, Pleaser. This, I have to say, is my least favourite song on the album, and as such, the one that I listen to least. And ironically, it is also the song that I have found the least information about online, so I had to do a lot of interpreting myself. Most of this is based on my personal interpretation of the song. So in my opinion, this song is about a relationship that is simply incompatible. It's not going to work because the two individuals in the relationship have very different needs. The speaker feels like they are dedicating themselves a lot more than their partner is, but by doing that, they are inadvertently harming the relationship themselves. I think the line that expresses that sentiment best is the line, "I never burn bridges, I just laden them with locks. I'm a smothering lover, under my love's weight it crumbles." Instead of breaking off a relationship that clearly isn't working, the speaker allows it to grow more and more toxic. My recommendation based on this song is Green Dot by Madeline Gray, in which our main character, Hera, finds herself cast as the other woman when she begins an affair with an older co-worker in her office without knowing that he is married. Hera continues to cling to this relationship even when signs start to indicate that Arthur will never leave his wife for her. And in that way, every single person involved in this relationship, Hera, Arthur, and also Arthur's wife, all 3 of them are hurt. I felt like this book was kind of Sally Rooney meets Fleabag in nature, so if you enjoy either of those forms of media, then I would definitely recommend this book. Track 3 is called His Land. This song is about keeping secrets within a relationship. The speaker is fixated on the things that their male partner hides from them. I personally love this song for its atmospheric gothic feel. It is very kind of film soundtrack-like. I can just kind of imagine wide kind of expanses of marshland, very kind of Wuthering Heights-y, I guess. And because of this, both of my recommendations for this song are pretty gothic in nature. My first recommendation is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I want to add in a disclaimer that I have not actually read this book, so I can't completely say whether or not it is good, but I do have it on good authority that it is. Like, everyone I know who has read it, like, raves about it, so I guess the evidence is there. From my understanding, it is about a wife who learns that her new husband has some pretty dark secrets that he's keeping, and again, it is quite gothic, so I did feel like it fit the vibe of this song pretty well. And my other recommendation for this song is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi, and I want to preface this with another disclaimer that although I have read this book, I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I do know that other people absolutely love it and rave about it, so I feel like me not enjoying it was more a me problem. Like, it just wasn't particularly the book for me. It wasn't that the book itself was bad. It has similar vibes to Rebecca, but it is gender swapped, so it is the new wife that has the closely guarded secrets, and the new husband is the one who goes looking for them with kind of disastrous results. And again, there are kind of gothic fairy tale elements to it. As I said, it wasn't really the book for me, but if it sounds like something you'd enjoy, then by all means read it, because you might really enjoy it. I just always want to be clear on whether or not I've A, read a book, or B, actually enjoyed a book I've read. Track 4 is called Drywall, and this is a pretty heavy song, chat. I think this might possibly be the darkest song in the album. Maybe. This song is about an abusive relationship. There kind of isn't really any two ways about it. The speaker's partner is abusive towards them, both physically and verbally. My recommendation for this song is First Love by Gwendolyn Riley. This is a non-chronological exploration of the female main character's main relationships in life, from her parents to a few affairs that she has to finally her husband, who takes all of his anger and frustration out on her. You've got the line in the song, eggshell temperament, no emotional regulation, hysterical baby. Neve is constantly walking on eggshells because anything she says, her husband will take the wrong way and start an argument about it. As an aside, I really like how these lines kind of take sayings that typically are directed towards women and spin them on their head and direct them towards the man in the relationship instead. It's very cool, very clever. Again, I want to add a disclaimer that I wasn't a massive fan of the book. I think just because the subject matter made it pretty uncomfortable to read. So again, as with most of these books, please check content warnings. And now we come to track 5 and the lead single of the album, Labour. What is this song about? What is this song not about, honestly? To sum it all up, this song is about the fact that historically men expect an awful lot of women, and women typically are never acknowledged or shown gratitude for all the work they have to do and all the parts that they have to play. Roles that include stuff like therapist, mother, maid, nymph, virgin, nurse, servant, etc., etc. This song just screams female rage, and because of that I had a lot of books to choose from to recommend, because apparently I read a lot of books about female rage. Who knew? But in the end, the pick that I went with for this song was the Wolf Den trilogy by Elodie Harper. If you have spent any time on my channel, you will know how much I absolutely love this trilogy, because just like this song, these 3 books absolutely scream female rage. The female characters in this trilogy and the relationships between them, both positive and negative, are so incredibly well written. They are all very developed, they are all flawed, and most of them are very morally grey. And yeah, they're all just so three-dimensional, and it's an absolute joy to read. You know, despite all of the really awful things that happen to all of the women in this trilogy. These books are about a group of slave women who are forced to work in Pompeii's Lupanar, aka the Wolf Den, aka the city's brothel. It is specifically about our main character, Amara, whose main goal is to get herself out of the Wolf Den and become a free woman again. There are a couple of lines that particularly resonate with this trilogy, such as "just an appendage, live to attend him, so that he never lifts a finger." These women are seen as commodities, as objects that are owned by the brothel's owner, Felix, who gets all of the credit and pretty much all of the money that they make, despite never actually doing any of the work himself. And also the line, "It's not an act of love if you make her." The women are literally forced to have sex for a living and act like they love it. And also in the later books, Amara especially is forced into doing a lot of things out of fear because the men in her life could literally ruin her life. This entire trilogy is just phenomenal, so I would absolutely recommend it. Please, please read it. Track 6 is called Boys, Bugs and Men, and this song is about how men can sometimes be cruel just because they can, because they want to display their power and assert their dominance over others, especially women. I have a couple of recommendations for this song, and my first one is If We Were Villains by Emil Rio. I chose this book because there is one character in particular that I think perfectly embodies the spirit of this song. The character Richard is someone who feels the need to assert his dominance over his friendship group, and when his position within this friendship group is called into question and his insecurities start to grow, he asserts this dominance with increasing violence. He is the exact kind of man that this song is about. My other recommendation for this song is Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, and I believe this is the first myth retelling of this video. And honestly, I'm quite surprised that it took me 6 entire tracks to get one in. This book is a retelling of the myth of Perseus and Medusa. There are, I think, quite a lot of figures from Greek mythology that embody this song, but none other than Perseus, particularly this version of Perseus, because he has this way of approaching every single obstacle he faces as just something he needs to dispose of as quickly and dispassionately as possible. You know, we see this with the way that he handles Medusa, who in this book is quite a lot more vulnerable. And we also see it with the way that Perseus rescues Andromeda from the sea monster. And finally, we see it in the way that he turns all of the guests at his wedding to stone. I, would say spoiler warning, but, this is all stuff that happens canonically within the myths. And, those myths are thousands of years old. So, I'm okay with not saying spoiler warning to that. He has zero empathy towards anyone who stands in his way, and with several gods behind him, he seems pretty unstoppable. So we had to ask the question, who is the real monster in this story? Moving on to track 7, which is called Knitting Song. This song is about women supporting women, both across generations and amongst peers. It's really wholesome. I think it's maybe the most wholesome song in the entire album, because it's not particularly sad in any way. Most of the other songs, if they are wholesome, are sad. So I have not 1, not 2, but 3 recommendations for this song. My first one is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is about an intergenerational coven of witches where magic is passed down and taught through the generations, and there's a real thematic focus on womanhood and sisterhood. I will say that I have only read this book in the series so far. There is a sequel that is out, and there is also a kind of prequel novella to this series, which I have not read yet. So I can only really speak about the first book, and I enjoyed the first book. I really enjoyed it up until the last 50 pages when it kind of fell off a little bit for me. But again, I feel like that is a me problem rather than a book problem. Long story short, this book is well worth reading, especially if you're an adult who grew up watching and reading Harry Potter and has since become completely disillusioned with that whole series because of J.K. Rowling's transphobia. This book is actually written by a trans author and deals quite a lot with identity politics and stuff. I think in a quite a good way. So yeah, would definitely recommend. So that was my recommendation for the theme of like women supporting women across generations. I also have 2 recommendations for just general women supporting women amongst, you know, their own peers, amongst people their own age. I'm first recommending Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Farida Abike Amide for a really interesting subversion of the Me Girls trope, where all of the girls in this book kind of support each other and team up against the absolute human trash that is the straight male population of this book. And secondly, I'm recommending Adult Assembly Required by Abby Waxman for just generally really wholesome female friendship. This is, I'd say, the only truly wholesome recommendation out of the 3, because the others do get pretty dark. This book actually is super wholesome, and, you know, it's about women supporting women and healing, and yeah, just it feels like a big hug, really. Next we come to track 8, As Good a Reason. This was my favourite single in the lead up to the album release. I'm still kind of undecided about whether or not it's still my favourite song now that the entire album's out. And my recommendation for the song is also another favourite of mine, Rouge by Mona Awad. And I don't really know why, but I have always associated this book with this song and vice versa. Actually, I do very much know why. The song is about self-love and rejecting beauty standards that feed into the male gaze, and this book is about a woman, Belle, who is obsessed with skincare and looking young and beautiful. While investigating her mother's sudden death, Belle gets drawn into this very mysterious, potentially very dangerous beauty spa. I feel like Belle could have definitely done with listening to this song. I think it would have solved a lot of her problems. It would have made the book quite a bit shorter, actually. Track 9 is called Triassic Love Song. This is a really sweet, sad song with a really sweet, sad story behind it. It's inspired by this fossil that is known as the Triassic Cuddle between a proto-mammal and an amphibian, 2 completely different species that normally wouldn't, you know, interact with each other unless, you know, they were attacking each other. I don't know. But these 2 animals sheltered from a storm together, and when their shelter flooded, they died all kind of snuggled up together and made for a very cute, very sad little fossil. Honestly, I kind of struggled coming up with book recommendations for this one because the inspiration behind the song is such a specific situation. But if you enjoy the song and you like the idea of giving very kind of human thoughts to very not human characters, then you might enjoy Pod by Layleen Poole, which is a book where all the characters are marine animals in the Indian Ocean, and they have to deal with things like climate change and ocean pollution and overfishing while not actually knowing what those concepts are. There are multiple POVs from multiple different species, and they all seem pretty human while very much not being human. It's very much a kind of Finding Nemo / Finding Dory type of situation as well, so if you enjoy those films, again, I would recommend the book. I could also recommend The Bees by the same author, but Pod overall is a lot sadder, so that's what I've gone with. A sad book for a sad song. And speaking of sad songs, next we have track 10, Escape Pod. Honestly, the first time I listened to the album all the way through, I did not think it could get much sadder than Triassic Love Song, but then we get hit with this. Talk about a double whammy of tears and suffering. Escape Pod is at least somewhat inspired by Laika, a Russian dog who was famously shot into space and sadly died while in orbit. I think the saddest thing about the entire situation is that the Russian scientists and engineers working on the project knew that Laika wouldn't survive the trip, and, you know, there was no way around it. But obviously Laika, being a dog, had absolutely no idea what was going on. I always get really emotional when I think about Laika, so naturally this song just does something to me, man. It's really sad. I really like reading books about space, so naturally I have quite a few recommendations. My first one is Wait by Jeanette Winterson, which actually does feature Laika. It is mainly a retelling of the myth of Atlas and Heracles. Don't ask me how Leica fits into that whole situation. I honestly have no idea, but the parts of the book that involve Leica are honestly by far the strongest parts of the whole book. And then for more spacey vibes, I have a couple of other recommendations. Firstly, Orbital by Samantha Harvey. This book follows kind of 24 hours in the lives of 6 astronauts, well, 4 astronauts and 2 cosmonauts aboard the International Space Station. This book is quite literary and atmospheric. Get it? Because planets have atmospheres. Anyway, it has pretty detailed character studies of all 6 inhabitants of the ISS, and it feels quite reflective and solitary, which I thought was quite similar to the song. And my final recommendation for Escape Pod is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This song is literally the situation that our main character finds himself in when he wakes up in deep space by himself on a spaceship with like no memories. The first line in the song is literally, "There was confusion," and you know, that very much is Ryland's first thoughts waking up. I would say more, but I feel like you need to go into this book pretty much blind, knowing nothing about it. Kind of similar to how Ryland is at the start of the book. So yeah, just read it. Don't learn anything about the book before you read it, but like, please read it. It's so good. Track 11 is called Last Woman on Earth. This song is about how women lack agency and ownership over their bodies. Even after death, some men still feel entitled to them, which is just gross. You have the line, "They can't reserve neighbouring plots or request to be buried on top," which references Marilyn Monroe's crypt. Hugh Hefner reportedly paid $75,000, although it would actually be a lot more in today's money, to be buried next to her. And this guy called Richard Poncher reportedly requested to be buried face down in his crypt above Marilyn Monroe's. Disgusting. Disgusting men. This song really makes me think of Greek mythology, specifically women in Greek mythology who are usually sexualized or vilified, or both, such as Helen. Helen of Troy, Helen of Sparta, Helen. So both my recommendations for this song are Greek myth retellings. My first is The End Crowns All by B. Fitzgerald. This is a Sapphic Trojan War retelling starring Helen and Cassandra, 2 of my favourite characters in Greek mythology, and 2 women who do actually have quite a few parallels in the source material. So to see them cast as love interest is such an incredible choice. Honestly, like, I was so excited to read this. I had very high expectations, and thank God my expectations were met. Exceeded, even. For both Helen and Cassandra, their downfall was brought about by men desiring them. Helen may or may not have said yes to Paris, taking her away from Sparta to Troy, and regardless of whether or not she actually consented to being taken to Troy, she is very much vilified for it, whereas Cassandra refuses Apollo's advances and is cursed by him because of it. You literally can't win. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Long story short, if a man desires you in any respect, you're screwed. However, in this retelling, both Helen and Cassandra take back a lot of agency of their own bodies and their own actions. They take back control from the men, which is really cool. And my second recommendation is Galatea by Madeline Miller, which is so much smaller than The End Crowns All. Just like, look at these 2 books together. That's actually really funny. You've got the big one, you got the tiny one. This is a short retelling of the myth of Pygmalion from the perspective of Galatea, the statue he creates and promptly falls in love with. Galatea is a character who is quite literally objectified. I mean, at first, in the myth, she very much is literally an object, and as a statue she is physically incapable of rejecting Pygmalion. But once she is transformed into a woman, nothing really changes with regards to her agency. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, for example, where this story is told, Galatea still doesn't speak. She doesn't have a voice. She is still pretty obedient. She is Pygmalion's obedient wife, and this retelling finally gives her a voice and gives her agency. Track 12 is called Bones on the Beach, and this song is about the effects of burnout, whether that burnout is physical, emotional, mental, and just wanting to be a pile of bones lying in the sun forever. But then it also kind of does a 180 and talks about how that mentality is kind of problematic and not really something that we want to be romanticizing, you know? My recommendation for this song is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Atessa Moshfegh. And again, another disclaimer that I have not read this book, but I thought that the concept of the book fit the song to a T, and I literally could not find any other recommendation that was a better fit once I thought of it, you know? The book is about a woman who takes a lot of drugs in order to sleep and not do much else for a long period of time. But also my understanding is that this main character is supposed to be unlikable, and you're not supposed to admire her or admire what she's doing. You're meant to view it as something that is problematic and something that is, you know, not the best way in which to live your life. And, you know, that side of the book also fits with the sentiment of the song. We have 3 songs left to discuss, and I really hope that I have enough memory in my phone to handle that, because I have been yapping for a good long time now. Next we have track 13, Hunter, and this song has gained a lot of popularity on TikTok, especially for like one particular line, which I will be discussing later. In this song, Paris uses a lot of wilderness imagery to denote the struggle someone can have with a mental illness, likening this illness to a skeletal beast who is just looking for a meal. The speaker sympathizes with it and understands it. You were lonely, you were like me. Now, there were 3 different ways I could have used this song as a jumping off point for a book recommendation, so I've just decided to recommend one book for each kind of direction. So firstly, I'm going to take this song very literally and recommend a book that is literally about a hunter, i.e. Atalanta. This is For the Winner by Emily Hauser, which is my favourite Atalanta retelling that I have read. And there is also a very slight enemies/rivals to lovers subplot in this book that really fits the vibe, and it is really good. Just to note that this is book 2 in a trilogy, the Golden Apples trilogy, but books 1 and 3 are also brilliant and definitely worth reading. So read book 1, For the Most Beautiful, first before you read this, but it's definitely worth it. My next recommendation is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Matar and Max Gladstone. This recommendation is based purely on the line, "If I was easy to kill, you would have done it already," which has kind of been adopted by TikTok and made into a pretty popular sound. So yeah, I thought I would kind of slide in on the trend, I guess. This is a science fiction sapphic romance between 2 agents on opposing sides of a multiversal war. They start off as mortal enemies, but by leaving each other messages at every single location they go to, they realise that they might actually be the only people who understand each other. It is so good. It's so good. And finally, I have a recommendation based on the actual metaphorical meaning of the song, all of that stuff about one's battle with a mental illness. And for that, I have gone with The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. This is a book where the main characters, a boy and his mother, are facing a lot of pretty massive challenges. They're both dealing with a huge loss and the overpowering grief that comes with that. The boy is also battling various mental illnesses and bullying and unrequited love, and the mother is trying to keep her job, her home, and custody of her child, all while dealing with a hoarding problem. It is a lot, and honestly you will get about halfway through the book and think, things can't get much worse. for these two poor people, but inevitably they will get worse. It's an incredibly sad book, but it's also very heartwarming, and you do really see the characters grow throughout the story and come out a lot stronger. This is actually my most recent read amongst all of the books that I am recommending in this video, and I can already tell that this is going to be a book that lives rent-free in my head forever. Moving on to track 14, The Warmth. This song is all about healing from trauma and getting to the point where, while that trauma is still there, it'll always be there, it's no longer directly impacting you every single day. And my recommendation for this song is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This book is marketed as a rom-com, which is probably why you might be a little bit surprised to find it as a recommendation for this particular song. But honestly, it kind of reads more like women's fiction. Like, the romance does play a major role, but it is also about the female main character, Emma, healing from her childhood trauma and allowing herself to love and be loved. You have this repeating line in the chorus of the song which goes, "It can't hurt me. It's still there, but it can't now the warmth's returning," which is a pretty realistic depiction of trauma. It's not going to go away immediately or magically, and in the book Emma does experience a couple of spirals because of it, but as she takes time to heal, cut off the people who are harmful to her, and open up to the people who can help her, her trauma can't affect her as much as it used to. I also really like this book because it shows that being in a relationship won't automatically fix all your problems. In fact, getting into a relationship before you're ready can lead to codependency and can do more harm than good. And you should see an actual qualified therapist instead of treating your partner as one. Normalize getting help. See a therapist. I am going to switch the lamp on because the sun is setting. That is how long I have been talking. It's been like an hour and a half. Help. And finally, we have arrived at the last song in the album, track 15, which is called Yeti. This song depicts that moment of closure after a relationship has ended, when you no longer feel any anger or heartbreak about or towards your ex, just sweet indifference, gentle apathy, wholesome, quiet dispassion, restful neutrality. Annoyingly, for both of these recommendations, the parts of the book that are actually most relevant to the song are at the end of the book, so unfortunately I can't go into like a massively detailed explanation of why I chose them for fear of spoiling the book. So yeah, just trust that the connections make sense in my head, even if they don't verbally. Yeah. So firstly, we have Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. This book is about a pregnant young woman who is working as a pizza delivery driver, and she becomes completely obsessed with one of her customers. We've got this line in the song which goes, "There was a time I felt for you, would collect these words like drops of dew and savour on my tongue in season dry." And this is like the protagonist of the book being really, really eager to take this woman's order and deliver it every single week, just so that she can get as much of her attention as she physically can, every single smidgen. And finally, my last recommendation is Hera by Jennifer Saint. There is a line in this song that goes, "We're nothing but myths now that neither of us believe in." And if you didn't think that I would stick a mythology book in this song just because of that line, what are you doing? Of course, I would squeeze one last mythology retelling into this video. This book is a retelling of a vast range of Greek mythology, all from the perspective of Hera, Zeus's wife and the queen of the gods. And I can't say much more, but if you have read the book and you know how it ends, then I really hope that you appreciate how well that particular line fits in with this book's ending. And that's it. Those are all of the songs on the album and all of the books that I wanted to recommend. If you have listened to the album, then let me know what your favourite song on it is down in the comments. I don't know, mine might still be As Good a Reason, but it might also be Escape Pod, or it might be Last Woman on Earth. I don't know. I love all the songs, to be honest. And if you haven't, then hopefully this video has persuaded you to do so. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I had the idea to do it with Torture Poets Department, which would be a pretty big undertaking because there are 31 songs on that album. I had the idea to do it when the album first dropped, but I feel like the moment has passed now because it's been like 6 months. But you know, if that's something you would still like to see, then let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more content. You can also find me on TikTok and Instagram and the Storygraph. My username on all those platforms is @WithTheJones if you want to see even more content from me. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!